Hey everyone, welcome back to Screen Review. My name is Megan.
I'm Dina.
Today we're going to be reviewing Uncut Gems from Netflix. It was released in 2019 and it is 2 hours and 14 minutes. So as always, we're going to give a quick spoiler-free review before we go into the details. So Dina, what'd you think?
Well, I can speak for the both of us that this was not one of our favorite movies that we have watched so far. It's very heavy on like the gambling lingo and just like a lot about gambling and money. So if you're interested in stuff like mafia movies, then like this is for you. If you liked Wolf of Wall Street, if you liked any mafia movie of the thousands that they are, you would like this movie for sure. If you even like basketball, you would also like this movie. It's like very heavily based on
Very heavy on
basketball.
basketball.
Very heavy on basketball. Overall, didn't really understand a lot of things just because, again, I'm not very well versed in basketball or gambling and money type things. But what I did like from the movie is, first of all, Adam Sandler was really good. It was kind of at points hard to take him seriously just because when I think of Adam Sandler, I think comedian. So like there were points where I'm like, wait, but this is Adam Sandler. Like he's not like a serious drama actor, but then like he really outdid himself in this movie. Like it was really good. It was incredible. And also in the movie, there were so many incredible shots. The first scene in the movie is with this gem, and you kind of like go through the gem and then like you're kind of like inside of a person, and it's like so weird but so cool. And I think that was like just incredible, like that whole little kind of artistic kind of movement type thing. But that was really good. And yeah, overall it was an okay movie on my part just because I didn't understand the whole, kind of like technicalities of it, but Adam Sandler kind of just made it all the better, if that makes any sense. How about you, Megan?
Yeah, same here. For me, Adam Sandler, I think he really kind of fell into that role. I mean, he's still Adam Sandler, so at points you're kind of like, what's happening? But overall,
Yeah.
I mean, I think he did a really nice job. Again, if you like basketball, you'll love this movie. Basketball is a huge part of it. Not exactly a basketball fan, so I don't really understand a lot of the, I guess, terminology for basketball, but if you do, you'll get it right away. I will say this, the movie also was a little bit chaotic and kind of stressful the whole time. So I would mention that.
Sure.
A lot of things are happening at once, a lot of conversations, a lot of characters are introduced right at the beginning, all one after another. I will also say The Weeknd is in this movie, kind of seemingly randomly, I would say. He's in this movie. Kevin Garnett plays a major part in this movie. It was interesting. It was an interesting watch. Again, it is 2 hours and 14 minutes. I feel that's almost unnecessary, I would say. I could say what they did in 2 hours and 14 minutes could have easily been done in like an hour and a half long movie.
For sure, yeah.
But almost the last 20 minutes, or specifically the ending of the movie, kind of almost made the whole thing worth it, I would say.
Yeah, it kind of just like summed up the whole movie in this last 20 minutes, but it was even more chaotic in those last 20 minutes, I will say. But not in like a stressful way,
I just get stressed very easily. So
yeah, I mean there was a lot of pacing and yelling and cursing. I would like to add that this movie is rated R. And it is rated R for a reason. It wasn't far too explicit, but I will say just be careful who you're around for this movie. And like, it's definitely, very intense.
Yeah, I would say Adam Sandler's character, he plays pretty much a quintessential New Yorker. A lot of cursing, a lot of yelling, loud volumes. At one point, I mean, one of the characters had to tell him like, I'm not going to help you if you're not, if you don't stop yelling. So that kind of, I feel, sums up exactly who Adam Sandler's character was in this entire movie.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, it was fine. That's what I'll say.
It was okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I will add from this movie, there are, like Adam Sandler, like the quintessential New Yorker, there are a lot of like very stereotypical characters in the movie. So if you kind of get easily sensitive to that, then like I wouldn't watch it just because, in your heart, you know. But it was still a good movie, like in different aspects.
Yeah, it was good overall. Like I'm happy I watched it. I am.
Yeah,
You know, I wouldn't
sure.
be, you know, I wouldn't be mad about it. I like movies, so of course I'm happy I watched
I wouldn't say it
it.
was a waste of my time.
No, definitely not. If you're looking for, you know, a good 2 hours and 14 minutes to spend on something, why not give it a shot? See if you like it. If you don't like it, just turn it off. You know, it's no biggie. Other than that, it's pretty much all I have to mention for the spoiler-free review points. Do you have anything else, Dina?
No, that's all. I think we can move into the spoiler zone of the movie.
I agree. So like Dina was saying earlier, you know, the movie kind of opens up. It opens up in Ethiopia in 2010, and you see all these people who work in a mine, and they all find, you know, one of the two groups of the two people who work in the mines find this gem. And then, like Dina said, you know, they zoom into the gem. A lot of colors and like almost galaxy looking things happen. You're kind of panning around through the scope of the camera in a sense. And then, like Dina said, you kind of end up in a person, and it turns out you are in Howard Ratner, Adam Sandler's character's colonoscopy appointment, which is lovely and pleasant to start off my first 10 minutes of movie-going experience.
Yeah, for sure. It was kind of a little gross, I will say. I'm very sensitive to that type of stuff, so I was like, oh, you know, but it was a very cool scene. It was very cool.
It was very cool. And I like, you know, there are parallels with that towards later on in the movie. But I will mention that, you know, when you're first introduced to this character of Adam Sandler, you know, Howard Ratner, he does not move slowly. He does not talk slowly. He is just ready to go. As soon as he's done with the appointment, he's up on the phone, going to different places. He's just all over the place. And through this kind of montage of him rushing around the streets of New York, you know, trying to get someone on the phone, it turns out he's trying to get this guy named Arno on the phone. And it turns out because he owes this guy Arno a lot of money. And you find that out because there are collectors that come to his jewelry office to collect the money from him. So, you know, this is kind of the first instance you see where, I mean, throughout the whole movie, Howard owes quite a bit of people money. You do find that out.
Yeah.
So,
so next, after you like see him running through New York, very stressful, like on this trying to contact this guy Arno, he comes to his own shop and he kind of gets mugged, honestly. He like offers some guy water, and the guy's like, no, I don't want water. And he's like, oh, I'll give you water. And the guy slaps him in the face. They go to like some Howard's like office or something, right, in his like shop or whatever, and they essentially just start mugging him, like robbing him because he owes this guy Arno money. They take off his watch, they take like something out, I already don't remember.
Like, it was like in his like jacket he had like a little envelope full of money. I think it was like $1,200
something
or something like that.
And like they just took it off of him and they were like, bye. And like,
yeah.
So then after that, you kind of see Howard again calling Arno. Arno is not picking up, and he's like, you literally sent like your guys to come get me. Like I was gonna pay you back or whatever, you know. So
yeah, and at this point in the movie, I mean, he even tells Arno via voicemail. He says, you know, that was a $20,000 watch. Like, they also took cash on me. Like, that better be deducted from the $100,000 or something. So he owes this guy quite a bit of money. $100,000. That's not exactly. You don't want to be in debt for that much. I feel like, especially to a single person. So then, you know, kind of through this whole experience, you see that essentially what Howard does is he'll get jewelry, kind of memorabilia from certain things. In this specific case, he gets a piece of The Weeknd's jewelry memorabilia, kind of, from his girlfriend, even though he's married, regardless. And he immediately goes to the pawn shop and, you know, pawns it off. And he gets the money from that. And then he immediately takes that money. Instead of paying back Arno, which you'll see is a major theme in this movie, instead of simply paying back Arno, he goes and gambles it on a game, on a basketball game specifically.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like a very typical like trope of gamblers where they like the moment they get money on something, they want to make it something more, you know, like invest it, I guess you could say, into something more, even though it ends up they're using someone else's money to get themselves more money kind of thing. So that's like a common thing that you will see throughout this movie. But yeah, he did get this necklace from his girlfriend. It took me a while to understand what her name was, so I just kept saying like his mistress because I knew he was married. Yeah, and because I knew he was married. Like he like kind of goes to his apartment that he shares with his girlfriend, and he's like, and she's like, and he was like, oh, last night I was putting my son to sleep, and she was like, well, I didn't want you have kids, like that's not my fault. And I was like, wait, so they're not, so what? I was very confused for a little bit there.
Yeah, it's a little bit
And,
weird.
you know,
Yeah.
Eventually,
It was definitely, it comes
together.
together. Yeah. It took me a while to figure it out too. I thought she was so many different people. Every time I saw her, I thought she was a different girlfriend that he had. Nope, just one person. But regardless, so when Howard is in his shop, he is dealing with this group of guys, specifically Damani and Kevin Garnett. There are these two guys. It seems that Damani is in business with Howard to bring kind of, people into his jewelry shop to buy things. So Damani brought Kevin Garnett from a very famous basketball team into the shop to buy something. So, they call him KG a lot throughout the movie. So KG didn't want anything. He didn't like anything. And then Howard gets this shipment in from some guy comes in with like a cooler, and it's a bunch of fish. And then he opens up the fish because this is what it came in for some reason. And there was this like
because
the
it was
stone.
Illegal.
It definitely because it was illegal.
Yeah.
So he takes out of the fish this little rock, and you see that it's the rock from the beginning of the movie that the Ethiopian miners found in that cave in 2010. Now it's 2012 in the movie. So you see this, and he goes to KG and he brags about it, and then KG gets completely mesmerized by this black opal, as Howard calls it.
And KG gets like so mesmerized by it that like he goes into like this trance or something where like he sees his life as well as like the life of the opal, I guess, like from when it was mined, like flash before his eyes, and like, or at least you see it on the screen. We don't really know if maybe KG was having this hallucination or if it was just, I would assume so, yeah, but you see it on the screen, and then like you see kind of like KG just like leans on glass and it shatters. He's like, oh my god, this is a sign, like I need this opal. And like it was so dramatic, like he was just like, really need it, like I really need this opal. And Howard is like, oh, but I have to sell this opal for an auction, and KG is like, no, but I need it. So they kind of they end up making this deal where KG can have it for one night, and while he has it for this one night, Howard can hold on to his favorite ring and his earrings, so like his diamond earrings or whatever. And so off the bat, I immediately was like, that's going to turn into a bad idea. Like he's letting him borrow it for a night. Like I know that's going to turn into a bad idea. And well, yeah. And so after he gets this ring from KG, he immediately pawns it, I think. Again, I'm not...
Yeah, the ring. Yeah, it was like the 2008 championship ring, I think it was, like for the Celtics.
Right. And he pawns it, right? And something like, and like to hold on to it, again, not very well versed in like the pawn shop business and gambling and all that. But basically he borrows it and he ends up pawning it, which already is kind of like, oh, wait, what? Like you're using, like he's borrowing this thing for a night, and like now you're pawning his ring that you promised you would keep safe just so you can get your rock back. Like it was already like messy. Like that's just, it's set up for a messy, next few scenes, the rest of the movie.
Yeah, the whole rest of the movie. It just, it starts off messy and stressful, and it just really continues the whole way, kind of on the longer thing. It seems that Howard keeps making the same mistakes every chance he gets, and it's very frustrating to watch as a viewer. But regardless, the next notable thing that happens, I suppose, would be it's Howard's daughter's play night at school. And so, he goes with his whole family. The daughter is backstage. She's going to be in the play. He has his two other kids there, and his wife is there. And he's on the phone the whole time, basically yelling at Damani, because Damani gave KG had the opal. KG went back to Philadelphia to do practice. Damani and Howard went to Philadelphia to try to get this opal back, but Damani kind of ditched him in Philadelphia. And so Howard had to go back for the daughter's play night. So that's where we are. So he's blowing up Damani's phone, just spamming him saying, where's my opal? Why did you leave me? Just texting him the whole time. So he's almost not paying attention to the daughter's play that's about to start, or any conversations his family is having with, their friends at the show. Right. So this is already kind of going a little bit south, you would say. And then next time, he kind of turns around and he notices that the collectors that Arno sent are at the play as well. So Howard comes up with this kind of bluff almost, where he says, I'm going to go to the bathroom really quickly. And then he gets up and he talks to the collectors. He's like, oh, let's go talk outside. So they all go outside, and it gets messy.
Yeah, you know, usually when you hear "let's go talk outside," you can imagine what comes next. But I would like to add that before this, you kind of see the relationship between Howard and his family. You kind of get to know that, like, he's very close with, like, his middle son, who is obsessed with
Mm.
basketball. And there's this scene where his wife, Dina, not a very common name, so that made me very
No, it's
excited.
not. Yeah.
His wife Dina like yells at him like, "Go put your son to sleep," their youngest son. So he puts him to sleep, but obviously Howard is watching this basketball game on his phone because, like, you know,
He
he
bet
can't
on
look
it.
away for he bet on it and he can't look away for a minute. So, you know, it kind of like shows this like interesting parenting. But then you see him with his eldest son and you kind of see like, oh, like he kind of has a good relationship with his kids. Like he likes his kids, you know, it doesn't make him seem like a neglectful father. At least in the movie, it doesn't show him
Agreed.
as one. It
Yeah.
shows him, so when you see him at this play and he's on his phone the whole time, his wife, who you can already tell, like,
Is
they don't really
frustrated
say
and
the
does
word
not like
divorce.
him.
Yeah, they never really say the word divorce, but like you see that his wife very clearly hates him, and it's very clear that they're planning on getting a divorce. They never say the word, but you can tell. And so she's like very frustrated that he's on the phone. He gets up and leaves. His sons are worried for him. It's like a whole mess. And that's when you see him say, "Let's go outside." And then they go outside, huge fight. These guys have been stalking him for a while because, you know, he owes Arno money. And it's just like a huge fight. And they kind of get into this, at one point they get in a car and like they're like fighting and like they're like, "You still owe Arno money," basically is like the whole fight. Like,
Yeah, Arno's in this car.
yeah, Arno's in this car, and then they're like, "Oh, you got new money, you used my money, and then you ended up betting it on another basketball game." He's like, "Don't worry, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win." And even
Yeah, at this point, he did think that he won that bet because that was the game he was watching that night.
Yeah, and he did win, but that doesn't matter because he still used other people's money on a bet.
Exactly.
So it's like already like a messy situation. Again, a recurring theme of Howard not learning from his mistakes. And so they kind of like strip him naked because, like, you know, they want to take all his things, you know, to pay them back, and put him in a trunk.
Yeah, the trunk of his own car.
Of his own car, right. And so you see him like call his wife Dina and is like basically like, "Please help me." And then she kind of comes out and he's like butt naked and he's like, "Don't worry, I got this, I don't need you anymore." And he ends up going back to the play in completely different clothes. His son is like, "Whoa, what happened to you?" Again, you can see that him and his son like kind of have a good bond, and like his son loves his father. And so it was just like a very intense scene, that whole fight.
It was very intense.
Yeah, and it kind of made him seem like a coward. Throughout the movie, he like seems like a coward, this guy.
Yeah.
Howard. Like he just wants money, and like
he seems like he's all talk. Like he acts like a, you know, tough, but then when it comes down to it, when he's in the car, he's like, "Oh, I'll get the money." Like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Like, I need my glasses." Like little things like that. He tries to take off his glasses. Like, "No, like take the rest of my clothes, but like I need my glasses." Things like that almost.
Is weird, yeah.
It was weird. I will also mention that the oldest son, the one you said, you know, he's the closest relationship to, which I agree with. They're very similar too, because this game that Howard's watching on his phone, where he was like, "Oh, I bet big money on this." The son was like, "Yeah, like last week, like I made $50 from the game that I bet on." So his son is picking up these habits that Howard is, you know, perpetuating. And it's just almost like,
but you can tell like his son looks up to him in a way.
Oh, 100%. Because he's like, "Oh, did you bet a lot of money, Dad?" Because I mean, kids love money, you know, like they're gonna be fascinated by it, not know how dangerous that is to bet that much money on a basketball game. It's stressful. So little things like that, you know, it kind of humanizes Howard in a sense, but it's just he does it to himself, all these things. And I will also say that this game that he was betting on, that Howard was betting on, and he thought he, you know, hit it big and he won all this money. Arno actually went to the guy where he placed the bet and took all that money. So his bet was kind of null and void. So he didn't win any money, and he's right back where he started because he owes Arno money, which is fair. So at the end of the play, everything happens. Howard ends up needing to go out to the weekend's concert to meet up with Damani and KG to get this opal back. Because remember, Damani is in Philadelphia, supposedly, with KG trying to get the opal back, and they're coming back to New York City for that night, I guess, for the weekend's show. And so Dina, want to mention the whole little thing that happened with him and his daughter? I know you like that part.
Yeah, I did like that part. So right before this, it was right before he left. right
for the
before he
weekend.
left, he kind of is like at his house, and his daughter kind of comes in. Again, this showcases his familial relationships. His daughter comes in, very stereotypical teenage daughter. She's like on the phone with her friends, and she's like whatever, and like her dad is like, Howard is like trying to talk to her, and she's just kind of like, okay, like very like not lethargic, but just like not caring about it.
Yeah, because she's like on the phone with her friend. She's like half paying attention, half listening.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, but you know, you're my daughter, blah blah blah. Basically, like, oh, you did so well at your what is that, your play? And she's like, hey, cool, basically. And it just like again shows like that he does care for his family, because a lot of fathers don't have that type of patience. So like it kind of shows like, you know, with his son it's one thing, but when you show like a father and a daughter, it's like, it usually in movies it represents kind of a soft side of a man. You like, you know, as like a trope in movies, it usually like when a father has a daughter, it's supposed to represent his soft side. So I guess that was like kind of a way of showing like, yeah, he's a faulted character, but he has his morals in a sense. Like he loves his kids, maybe not his wife, but he loves his kids. So again, you can kind of see that again earlier when he was like with his girlfriend. He was like, oh, but I was putting my son to sleep, so I couldn't answer. Even though you don't really see him do it, he mentions it, and like, yeah, it just shows his priorities in a sense.
Definitely. Yeah. So then, you know, Howard leaves after the kind of awkward conversation with his daughter, and he goes to the Weeknd's concert in New York City and tries to find Damani, tries to find KG with his opal. Damani's there, KG's not there, and neither is the opal. And at this point, it's really, really important because Howard needs it by that Monday, I believe, in order to put it up for this auction that he wants to enter the opal in. So it's really important that he gets this back, but it's seemingly impossible for him to get it back. Every time he meets up with Damani, you know, KG has it. KG's nowhere to be found. He's just kind of holding on to this opal for as long as he can. And kind of a weird plot line, I would say, for this kind of scene would be they're at the Weeknd's show in the club. The Weeknd demands he can only perform with a black light, which was odd. Yeah, and then you see that the Weeknd is interested in Howard's girlfriend, Julia. And this causes like a huge fight. Like Howard and the Weeknd get into a fight. Julia and Howard both, you know, leave the club all angry. They have this huge blow up fight while Howard is getting into a taxi, and they're just arguing, cursing at each other just in the middle of the night outside of this random club.
Which I will say, as strange as that scene was, it was honestly like a pretty to watch scene. Like I love in movies like that when they show kind of like two people yelling at each other, if that makes sense, because the way that they did it, where he kept getting in and out of the taxi cab, like he just kept getting in and out, and like she was pulling him out, and he was like, just forgive, and she was like, just forgive me, blah blah blah. And then afterwards they kind of showed like a parallel of her walking back to the club like all angrily, and him walking back to his office, because he ends up sleeping in his office that night because he doesn't want to go back to his apartment and see her all angrily. And it kind of just like, I don't know, I like the parallels with that and how they were both just very angry, a lot of anger in that scene, like in movies when they like kind of, you feel the emotion through the screen. It's like very powerful, and I liked that a lot. So I will say that was a very good scene. As random as it was a good scene.
No, it was definitely a good scene. And at this point, Howard and Julia kind of have broken it off a little, I would say. You know, they seem to not be together anymore. So he broke up with her. And then next notable scene I'll mention, I believe this was Passover dinner.
Yes.
Okay. So this is Passover dinner. Howard, extended family, everyone's there. Dina, his wife, the kids, everybody's there. And you know who else is there? Arno is there. Arno apparently is in some way related to Howard, which just adds another layer to this whole thing, that Howard owes Arno, his family, an exorbitant amount of money, you can only assume, and is refusing to pay him back. And they have to sit together and play nice at Passover dinner with the whole family.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
It was a very interesting dynamic, for sure.
It was an interesting dynamic.
Yeah,
it was strange. And so at this point, you know, Howard is like half paying attention during the Passover dinner, but he's on his phone at the beginning of the scene, you know, because he asked Julia to move out of the apartment. And so Julia sends him like a listing for another apartment, I believe, that she was planning on going to.
Yeah.
And then something like that. So then he, you know, gets on the phone, calls her and says, you know, I want you out of the apartment by 10 p.m. tonight. Like, you better not be there. Like, this listing better be real, all of this. And so that's kind of, I would say, mostly what happens, except for Howard does speak to one of his other family members. His nickname, I hope, his nickname is Gooey, which is strange and never explained. His name is Gooey in the movie.
Yeah.
And he, Howard brags as usual to his family and says, oh, I have this black opal, that I got, and it's going to auction on Monday. Even though, I mean, at this point, does he even have it back at this point? I think he has it. I think he gets it back maybe that day.
Know.
I don't know. He gets it back though eventually. Maybe next scene or something. Yeah, he gets it back. So, he wagers that, it's gonna be $1,000 to $3,000 a carat, and that this opal has what, like 3,000 carats, like 300 carats or something like that.
30, something crazy.
Yeah, just a crazy amount of carats. So he's like, this black opal is going to be worth millions for me. 600 carats. There we go. Yeah. So he's like, oh, this, it's going to be worth millions for me. So just get ready for me to, strike it rich, essentially. So his Gooey's like, oh, wow, you're so amazing, Howard. Like, you're going to be rich. So it's just interesting that he's bragging about this before it's even happened. So again, that kind of gives you a window into what kind of person that Howard is, and especially bragging about how much money he's going to make with Arno sitting right across the room who he owes money to.
Exactly.
It's just interesting. It's hilarious almost.
Yeah. Another hilarious scene during that like whole Passover dinner was like at the end, he kind of has this conversation with Dina, his wife, and he was like, come on, like give me a second chance, basically like begging for forgiveness, mostly because he just broke it off with that girl Julia. And so he's like, I'm begging for forgiveness, like just look at me. And it was just such a funny scene because she just like looks at him and she just starts laughing, and he goes, you have such a stupid face. And like he just like stands there like, oh. And it was just, it's like a random scene, but I just thought it was really funny.
No, it's hilarious. It was comedic relief for sure.
Yeah, it was one of the comedic reliefs in that movie. I mean, honestly, the whole movie at points was just like funny in the drama, just because like Adam Sandler, sometimes it's hard to take him seriously. So
definitely. And then it was funny because, when Howard and Dina were having their conversation, Howard goes to Dina and he says, oh, just like punch me in the face then. And she's like, I don't even want to touch you.
Yeah, it was just so
funny. And I will say that Dina Ratner, Howard's wife, is played by Idina Menzel, and I love her.
Yeah,
I love her. She's so talented. So I appreciated that she got a little time in the movie. So next notable scene is that Howard goes to the place that is gonna host the auction, and he wants to find the update on the opal, because at this point he turned it in late, so there's no picture of the opal in the actual pamphlet kind of flyer. I don't know how auctions work. I've never been to an auction.
There was a picture of it in the pamphlet, but he notices that there's like a correction in it, kind of like in a play when like the understudy plays, they kind of put a little piece of paper in it. It was like that, and it showed that the price changed on the opal.
Yes, so it's not going to be worth the millions like he thought it was, because the appraisal person that works at this auction place did an appraisal on it, and they valued it at 155 to like 225,000, I believe. It's like the range that they valued it at. And so he obviously freaks out and he demands to speak to the supervisor, this poor receptionist. I thought she was funny. I liked her.
Yeah,
she was funny. So, he demands to speak to this lady, and then he takes her phone from the receptionist and speaking to the supervisor. He's like, oh, this is a mistake. Like, I can get 6 different appraisals right now. And she says to him, you turn it in late. You had us work all weekend so we could get this new appraisal for you. And now you're going to call and complain? Like, I can either leave it as it is in the auction for this appraisal price, or I can pull it out of the auction. It's up to you. And so Howard says, all right, whatever, essentially. And then he tries to lie to the receptionist and be like, oh, yeah, I just spoke to your supervisor. She told me that her appraisal is wrong, to take all the little corrections out of the book. He's just lying again.
Yeah. And then next, he basically ends up asking Gooey, right? Gooey.
Yeah, Gooey. Strange.
To basically help him with the auction by boosting like the auction price. So basically what that means is, from what I got, is that like every time someone would auction on it, he would just go higher so that the other person would go higher, basically, which is also a type of gamble, because you never know when that other person's going to stop.
Exactly.
So again, not learning from his mistakes.
No, so, not learning at all. And now roping someone else into his mistakes. It was too nice to say no.
Far too nice. I think that Gooey was like his uncle or something like that.
Kind of family member.
He was a really nice guy, and like he was like, okay, like I'll do it.
I know, he was like, as long as like I can, as long as it's low risk, I can get my money back if I accidentally do win it. And Howard tells him, oh, don't worry about it, like I'll wire the money right back into your account, if the auction goes poorly. But the only reason Howard made this kind of bet with Gooey, this gamble, we'll say, to have him kind of egg on the other auctioneers. I don't know.
Auctioneer, I think.
Yeah. Regardless, the people at the auction, will say, to kind of get them to bid higher and higher, because he knew that KG was going to be there, and that KG desperately wanted this opal because he thought that it made him play better, which also was like a funny little side plot, because it's just an opal, in a rock.
He saw his life flash before his eyes, apparently.
So I liked the auction scene, which comes next.
I did too. I usually like auction scenes in movies just because they're this fast-paced thing that isn't intimidating. But it definitely was a good scene where kind of you saw Howard looking back and forth between KG and Gooey, like just back and forth, like saying, "Okay, Gooey, like he's gonna go higher." At one point, KG does not go higher. He's like talking to his, I guess they're called, what are they called? Like
advisor, like his financial person,
I guess. And she was basically like, stop. And so Gooey went up to 190K, and that's when KG stopped. So Gooey gets it for 190K. And so that was like, ugh, that sucks for him,
I know. Yeah. He was just trying to help, but now he's out $190,000 until Howard gives it back to him, and he just has a rock. And so Gooey is understandably upset, and Howard immediately, instead of trying to comfort him, he simply says, oh, I'll wire the money back to you, no problem at all. But like, can I have the opal? Like, can you give it back, please?
Yeah.
So Howard gets back this opal, and his plan is to sell it to KG again. But then Arno's little collectors show up, and they throat punch him first, which was funny. I don't know, because then Howard had like a little raspy voice and was like following after them. But then they punch him in the face, they throw him in the fountain, he loses his precious glasses. It's kind of like a sad little scene. I don't know why I think it was just because it was Adam Sandler, but I felt bad for Howard.
Yeah. For sure. Just because, again, Adam Sandler, you look at him and you're like, oh, like a comedian, a funny guy, a dad, His character was not as lovable. So anyway, this next scene, another kind of example of Adam Sandler playing dramatic roles, just kind of feels weird. He basically has this full-blown breakdown, like literally a breakdown in his office. And Julia comes there at one point, his mistress, because so she comes at one point, and like they're just crying together, and like it's like such a dramatic scene that it's funny. Like he's like crying, like he's like, oh my, like everything I do is wrong, blah 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 blah. And Julia's like in this very stereotypical kind of like New York meets Valley Girl type accent, where she's like babe, like it's okay, kind of like Harley Quinn vibes, like and she's like, oh no, it's okay, like blah blah blah, like I'm here for you. And then she turns around and she has like a tattoo of his name like on her hip or something. It was like so weird and out of like
it was strange, because at this point, I mean, they had been essentially broken up. So at this point, she got this tattoo of his name where they're not even together in a sense. So it was just kind of strange to see this happen. And I mean, Howard, it's almost, you almost feel bad for him. It's at this point, it's a little bit kind of disappointing to see this happen, but it almost feels like he threw kind of a little mini temper tantrum in a sense. He kind of like stormed into the office, like hit his face so no one would see like that his nose was bleeding and all of this. And then, he's like, oh, tell everyone to go home. Like, I don't want to work today because I had a bad day, essentially. So it was a sad scene. It was, as sad as it for someone who did it to himself.
Yeah, it was so sad that it was just funny. Honestly, like I thought that scene was like so dramatically funny. Like I just, again, because he's Adam Sandler, I couldn't take him seriously, but it was just like like I
will say that they did, like, they noted this like in the category on Netflix. It did say dark comedy. So at some points,
Yeah.
there were a few jokes here and there, I will say.
Yeah.
But
I mean, with the whole thing with Julia, like, it just added to, like, the funniness of it. It was just, ugh.
yeah, definitely. And then it's funny because Howard is having this whole breakdown. Julia's there to comfort him. And then, the phone rings and it's like Kevin Garnett's financial advisor person. And he immediately like lightens up and cheers up because Kevin Garnett's going to buy this opal. And he's like, oh, everything's fine now because I'm going to make money. I'm happy again.
Yeah. And from this point, it kind of makes his character seem like he's manic, because he just like went from this like super like I'm worthless, nothing I do is right, to just this like preppy like I'm gonna win, I'm gonna get all this money type thing. I was actually explained it to me recently that the thing about people with gambling problems is that they're the type of people who always think they're gonna win. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people who go to gamble and they're like, oh, probably going to lose. I'm going to give myself a limit. So if I lose this money, I won't be too upset because I know I did it to myself. But with gamblers, they're like always like, I'm going to win. Like, that's it. Like, I'm going to win. And when they don't,
this time I'll win.
Yeah. And when they don't, they lose thousands of dollars. And like, it just outweighs like it's, yeah. So that's
like
basically
an cycle.
Yeah, it's a very apparent trait that you see in Howard, where he always thinks he's going to win, and then he loses. And maybe he wins, but then he still ends up losing the money somehow.
Yeah, and then he turns around and gambles it again instead of just paying back Arno.
Exactly, yeah.
Back. You can, take the rest of it and do something else with it. But regardless, KG comes to the office and he's able to sell, Howard is able to sell KG the opal. And I believe it was for the 175, but Howard only ends up getting the 155,000 because 20,000 was going to Damani, I guess. That's the impression I got.
Yeah.
I thought that it was interesting, though, that this is the first time KG actually mentions to Howard, he asks him, how much did you pay for this opal? Like, because he's like, oh, I already bought it. You already have the money. Like, I won't be mad. Just kind of deal with me and tell me. And Howard says that he bought it for $100,000, but is upset because he was supposed to make millions off of it. And KG points out the morals of the whole thing, because he was like, what about the Ethiopian mine workers? Like, don't they deserve something for doing all the work? Yeah, and then Howard is almost, he gets defensive, and he's like, oh, like, all the phone calls I've made, like, how much time I put into this, and he's like, this is how I win, by making money. Like, you win playing your game, I win by making money and selling gems. And I thought this was a very interesting conversation in the movie.
It definitely, again, portrays this, like, manic episode that Howard is having, because he's just so, like, he's barely, at one point, he just, like, doesn't listen to KG because he's just so excited about making the sale to him, and like he immediately ends up gambling the money off before he pays Arno back. Immediately, when I say immediately, he ends up, while KG's in his office, KG gives him the money, and Howard notices, like, on the security cameras that Arno and his goons or whatever are in his shop. And so he texts Julia and is like, go to the next room over and go out the window. And Howard sticks his head out of the window of his office. Julia, in the room over, sticks her head out of wherever she is. And Howard takes the bag of money and hands it to Julia through the window. Like, they're outside of a New York, like, landscape, and they're handing each other a bag of money with $165K or $155K in it, something like that. And he's like giving her instructions on how to bet it and like where to go and what to do. And basically he's betting on this huge basketball game that KG is about to play in later that night. And it's like this scene, again, manic episode. Like, he literally is like out the window, like giving it to her. It was insane. And then the next scene is like, basically Arno and his goons are like trying to get to him, trying to get to Howard. And so they're like, where did the money go? Where did money go? And then one of Arno's goons, I forgot his name. He's like, I don't know the names either, but whatever. One of them is like, find that girl that like ran away to like go. She said she was going to the bathroom when she went to go out the window.
Yeah, and I'll also say that girl is the G-rated version of what they said.
yeah, for sure. And so they're like, basically they're like threatening Howard, like, just tell us where the money is, like, we need the money, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I already gambled it off. And they're like, call the girl and cancel the bet, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And at one point, they literally hang Howard out the window. And I was like, oh my God.
I thought they were going to drop him.
I thought they were going to drop him too. Like, I was like, that's it. The movie's over. They didn't drop him. He, again, this motive of him being a coward. He was like, wait, I'll do it.
Yeah, he was like, oh, I have kids. Like, let me, like, hold on. Like, my life is important too. Like,
yeah, kids that he rarely sees. As much as he loves them, he rarely sees them. Mm-hmm. And so then he, like, gets up and they're like, okay, as long as you call the girl. Doesn't call her. Oh, you know. And he's like, I can't do it. And she ends up betting the money. So. Yep.
Exactly. He ends up betting the money. It's basically too late at this point. And so all of Arno's goons, as we'll say, they go to go to the casino to try to get this money back before it's too late. And so what Howard does is, because he's in this little New York office, and I guess this is a thing because it's a jewelry store, what it is there's a door outside of the office leading into the hallway that you have to get buzzed into. There's a certain like box type room where you have to get buzzed in through a second door. So what Howard does, lovely idea, don't see it going wrong in any way, is that he locks in between these two doors. So they're not inside the jewelry shop technically, they're in between both buzzer doors. And they're stuck because early in the movie he had a problem with the buzzer doors, and so it's broken. So and what does he do? He turns on the basketball game that he has bet all this money he just made on.
And might I add, he asked Julia to bet $155K, and ended up, if he won the bet, he would get 1.6 million, something crazy like that, 1.2, something
over $1 million,
a lot more money, over $1 million. So he was like freaking out. All these guys were like, oh my God, we're about to lose so much money, and they're like stuck in this little box thing, whatever. Again, Howard's manic episode. He's running around the shop. He's freaking out. He's like, you guys can't touch me right now, but look, I'm winning this bet. He's losing his mind. Meanwhile, Julia's in like this, what are they called? Like betting boxes. I don't know what they're called, whatever. She's like sitting there. And one of Arno's goons, again, is like kind of looking for Julia, because it ends up apparently around this casino, they kind of know this bet as like the biggest bet of the night. It's like a huge bet. It's a huge kind of long shot. And so Julia is basically hiding from these goons because she knows it's like a super big bet. And she ends up going to like some guy's penthouse, whatever.
Yeah, hide out.
To hide out.
Plot.
Yeah. And so she like just sits there and she's watching the game, and she's like also really getting into it, like freaking out. She's like, oh my God, we're going to get so much money. And, in the box, meanwhile, again, back where Howard is, like he's having his manic episode, and the guys, especially Arno, who is his family, so he still has some remorse for Howard, is like realizing like, oh my God, like Howard is right. Like he's going to get a lot of money on this. Like the team he bet on is winning, blah, blah, blah. And so you kind of see this like kind of like almost awe-struck moment in Arno's eyes, like looking at Howard kind of pace back and forth in his craziness. Yeah.
So I will say, like, this scene, it's pretty important if you understand gambling and you understand basketball. Because I was watching and I resonated with Julia because she didn't know what was happening and I didn't know what was happening. She had to
But she was still excited.
I was still excited too, but I didn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, in order to win, Howard bet that the Celtics had to win the tip-off. They had to get like 26 out of 26. I don't know what that means, but they said that a lot. That was important. Yeah. But I will say, if you're not, a gambler, or you're not into basketball, kind of like I am not of either of those things, they make it really easy to follow along, I'll say. They keep you updated the whole time. Like, oh, Celtics won the tip-off. 23 out of 26, 25 out of 26. Like, they keep you updated. So even if you don't really know what's happening, they tell you, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And I will also say that right after the goons and Arno got locked into the little box room, one of them pulls out like a gun and threatens to shoot Howard through the glass. But Howard is like, oh, it's bulletproof. Like, if you shoot that off, like, it's just going to bounce and hit you. So all they could do was really sit there. They're stuck. They just had to sit there and watch the game. So the whole basketball thing happens. And this is, this whole kind of bet thing right from when he got the money from KG all the way now, this is to me where the movie really started to become worth it, because I was really invested at this point in the movie. I was kind of tired the rest of the time, but it was really good, this scene. So eventually you watch this whole game, all the collectors are watching in that little box. Julia's watching in the penthouse of some random guy's area. And Howard does it and he wins the bet. He's rich. So, him and Julia get on the phone immediately and he says, okay, like, get the money from the counter, however you collect the money, gamble. I don't know. So go get it, have someone walk you to the car and then come back here. Like, I'm going to take you to the Grand Canyon. Like, we're going to do all this stuff. Like, I'm so excited. Like, I can't believe it. Like, Arno's excited too because now he's going to get his money back finally. And so then Howard kind of, buzzes them out of that door so they can come back into the jewelry shop. And one of the goons takes out a gun and shoots him in the face.
Immediately. Right in the face.
I was not expecting this.
Neither was I. I had to I backed up the scene and rewatched it because I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, I just wasn't ready for him. Like, I knew he wasn't gonna have a redemption in the end, but I was not expecting the just right away shoot in the head, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't Arno; it was just one of the other guys. So it almost wasn't even his place to do it.
Yeah, I know. It was, and so then Arno was eventually trying to why did you do that? Why did you do that? Because they're still family. And then he shoots Arno. Arno's goon shoots Arno. Yeah, and so that's basically the end of that. And then you kind of see Julie getting all the money by herself and this other guy's limo that you see that she was in the penthouse of earlier. And so Julie gets the money. She has no idea that he's dead. No one knows obviously no one knows that he's dead. And then you go to see where Dina, his wife, and his kids are. And his son is like, oh my God, Dad's going to be so happy. At the end, because, he knew his dad was betting. They're watching the game too. Yeah. And so Dina was like, I don't know, he's being weird recently. I'm going to call the cops on him. There were cops to call. Yeah. Because he was being weird and acting like a criminal. And then that was just a crazy scene. It was back and forth, and I loved it. And then it ended up ending where you kind of full circle kind of moment, right? So like Megan mentioned earlier, it started with the gem kind of going into his colonoscopy, and now you kind of go through his blood wound that he has from the bullet, and you go into the gem back. So it's kind of just this full circle moment. And honestly, to me, now that I think back to it, it kind of shows this happens a lot. This type of gambling kind of thing happens a lot. So it's kind of showing yes, this is the circle of life for many people, the movie itself.
Definitely. Right? I love the parallels between the beginning and end. I absolutely love to have that full circle moment. It's something that I love in movies a lot. And I will also mention that these goons, after shooting Arno, after shooting Howard, they also that's not good enough for them. They also rob the store. They're that's taking everything.
Yeah, kind of the end of movies where they kind of show everything wrapping up. They show Julie getting the money and them robbing the store, which was kind of
Yeah. So. This movie, the ending, it leaves a lot of questions in your head because, it ends, there's a clear conclusion ending, but it's almost you're left with a lot of questions, what's Julia going to do with this over $1 million now? I don't think that Howard's wife knows that he bet this. She definitely doesn't. Is this Julia's money now? Arno's not going to be there to collect it. Is that other collector guy going to come get it from her? How's the family going to react? What's the dynamic going to be like? Will Dina be happy? I don't know. These are all
Who knows, yeah. They say a good movie leaves you asking questions. So
I would have a lot of questions.
Yeah, definitely. So at that, I think we're gonna end it. You have anything more to add, Megan?
I have nothing to add. This movie was, I would say, last 20-30 minutes makes it worth it, but if this is your type of movie, you probably won't like it.
Yeah. I did want to add that you should also follow us on YouTube just to rewatch the show if you really want. And yeah, I think that's all for today.
Yep. Next week, tune in. We're going to be doing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So
I'm really excited for that one.
Yeah,
okay. Bye.
Bye.